Hello, Power Apps friends. Thanks for tuning in to learn more about model-driven apps and Dataverse. Let's dive right in. Together in this tutorial, we're going to build out an end-to-end model-driven party planning app. This lets you set up events like holiday parties, birthday parties, and so on with basic information such as date and time, location, organizer, attendees, and more. But to build this kind of app, or any app that's really meaningful or useful, you first must understand the basics of Dataverse and how to work with it. Dataverse is essentially the data layer for your Power Apps. You can kind of think of it as a database, although in reality it's a set of APIs, or application programming interfaces. Basically the interface that lets you store and retrieve data for your Power App. If you worked with previous versions of Power Apps or with Dynamics 365, it was called the Common Data Service, so a name change there. You've got Power Apps as part of the Microsoft overall Power Platform, and then Dataverse sits below that. So again, this is your data layer. The building block of Dataverse is a table. If you're familiar with databases, this concept will just be a review for you. If you're not, though, you can think of a Dataverse table the same way you think of a table in Excel, or even a table like this in PowerPoint. You've got your columns, like first name, last name, and title. And then you've got rows or records, like the people shown here, Michael Scott, Dwight Schrute, and so forth. When we get into the demo in just a minute, you'll see that each table has columns, like these shown here. Each column will have a data type, whether it's required or optional, whether it's searchable, and so on. And after you build out your app and share it with your users, this is what a column is going to look like to them. This is an example of the contact table and the different columns that you get out of the box with it. And speaking of creating tables and columns, let's think through what we'd need to create a party planning app. First, we're going to need something to represent individual people. That is, the organizer of the party, the people attending, and luckily, Power Apps has a table for that, and it's called Contact. This is going to make our lives much easier because we can just reuse what's already there. It has all the columns we need, like first name, last name, and so on. But then we will need to create a custom table for our parties, and we could actually call it events. The columns here will be type, date, time, location, organizer, and attendees. Now, we're also going to need to create some relationships between the two tables here because an event has people related to it, specifically the organizer and the attendees. So just foreshadowing that a little bit here, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go into Power Apps and build out the tables and columns that we're going to need. I'm here at make.powerapps.com. If you aren't sure how I got this far, check out this other video where I walk you through how to create a free 30-day trial of Power Apps. First thing we need to do is to create a solution to hold our changes. We're not going to get too much into the details of that, but this is essentially a container for your changes that you can download and move to another environment. To create a new one, we'll say New Solution. We'll call this Party Planning. And then for Publisher, we have some defaults here. I'm actually going to create a new one, though. This will help us keep track of what we've done in the database versus what other folks have done. Display name, Tiny Technical Tutorials. We can use that for a name as well. We just can't have the spaces. And then prefix, importantly, will get prefixed in front of things like our table names and our column names. And this is how we know what we did in the database versus what another publisher did. So we'll go with TTT, save. Make sure you select that publisher and say create. Now if we click into party planning, we just have an empty solution right now. So let's go ahead and create a new table for our events. Clicking on tables, we'll come up to new and table, display name, event, and it'll automatically fill in the plural name, which is looking good, and then we'll say save. While we're waiting for that, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you get notified of other Power Apps videos as I upload them. Alright, so we have the table. Let's expand this table name event, and if we go into columns, you'll see there's actually a lot here that you get out of the box. We want to create our own columns, though. To do that, we'll say add column. The first one we'll create is type. So what is the type of event? And the data type here is going to be choices. So we want the user to be able to select some predefined choices. And we can define those here. There are some common choices here of yes, no, and so forth, but we want new choices. And these will be the types of parties or events. So we'll start with anniversary. If you hit enter, that'll drop down to the next line, then you can hit tab, tab, and save yourself some mousing. Birthday, enter, tab, tab, going away party. You can also add new items with the mouse if you want. And then holiday party. Okay, those look good. We'll hit save, which is just going to save your choices. Then you also need to save the column itself. There's other options that you could edit here. There's advanced options and so forth. But for what we're doing, we're going to click on done. And the column is there. It's bolded because we haven't saved the table yet. We'll add some more and then go save the table. So we'll add another column. This one's going to be date and time of the party or the event. And there actually is a date and time data type right here. So select that. Leave everything else the same. Done. Add another column. This one will be for location of the event. And similar to what we just did for type, this is going to be choices. And our choices here will be Albany, Buffalo, enter tab tab, New York, enter tab tab, and Scranton. Click on save, and then save the overall column. And for now we're going to save the table, and let me switch back to the slides real quickly. You remember here we had columns for organizer and attendees, and we need to create those as well, but first let's talk about relationships. There's three types of relationships. The first is a one-to-many, also sometimes referred to as one-to-n. An example of this would be organizer to event, meaning one organizer, which we're using the contact table for that, can organize many events. The second relationship is many-to-one, also known as n-to-one sometimes. The example here is many-to-one event to organizer because many events can have the same one organizer. And again, that's the contact table that we're using in our demo at least. And I'll point out that this relationship, the one-to-many and the many-to-one, is the same relationship. It just depends which direction you're reading it. When you go set it up in the system, each of those tables will have the same relationship attached to them. And then finally we have the many-to-many, sometimes called n-to-n. And here the example is attendees to events. Many attendees can attend many events. So those are the basics of relationships. There's definitely nuances and more you can do with these. I could easily do a whole video just about relationships in Power Apps. If you're interested in that, just let me know below in the comments. But let's talk about how to create these. For the many-to-one and one-to-many, you have two options. The first option is the one I like to use, which is to add a lookup field, which is a type of a column. You add that on the many side, or the many table, and you point that to the one side of the relationship. This automatically creates the relationship for you, which is easy peasy. The second option is to manually create the relationship. And then over here, options for creating that many-to-many, your only option is going to be manually. We'll look at both of those in a minute. But just as a reminder of the relationships that we're building, we need one for events to organizers. That'll be the many-to-one because an event can only have one organizer. And then we need a many-to-many for the attendees because we can have multiple attendees. Let's go into Power Apps and see how to do this. Back here in my solution, I'm in Event, and we want to add a lookup column that points to the organizer, which again, we're using contacts as organizers. And this will create the many-to-one relationship event to organizer. So let's do that. We'll add a column, call it organizer. And data type here, rather than text or choice or something like that, there's actually a data type for lookup. And this is going to look up to, we'll see in the UI when we get there that you can actually browse to the one contact that you want for the organizer. So select contact, we'll leave this optional and say done. So the column was created, it's of type lookup, which means if we come back here to relationships, let me just expand that a little bit here. We now have the relationship event to contact. So it did all that for us, which is nice. For the many-to-many relationship, though, event to attendees, we need to add that manually. So we'll say add relationship, many-to-many. This will also point to contacts. And we'll say done. Importantly, make sure you save the table. And now we need to go work on the form or the UI. I'll click on Forms over here, and forms are basically the screen that users will interact with. In this case, we want the form type main. I'll zoom in a little bit here, coming down to the bottom. We have a recommended field and a required field, so those are on the form by default. They sort of have to be. But we added those other columns as well. We need to make sure those get added here. So coming over to the left, go to Table Columns, and we want to drag these over onto the form. So we'll start with Type. I'll just pick that up and drag it here where the line is, and then drop. We're also going to need Date and Time, Location, and Organizer. Now we do have owner here. Owner is not the same as the organizer as the event. That's going to be the owner of this particular record, and it's defaulting to me because I'm the one who created this. So that's looking good. You'll remember though that an event can have attendees when we set up that many-to-many relationship. So this one's a little bit different. You'll notice there's no field or column over here for attendees. That's because we need to create a subgrid to display this one. Before we do that though, let's add a new section. If I come up here to Components and grab a one column section, I can just drag that over. The section's just, again, kind of an empty container to hold your fields. We'll call this Attendees. And then scrolling down, select Subgrid. You can drag that over there. And a subgrid is basically a table that will display multiple items. For this, we want to show related records, meaning it's only going to show attendees or contacts that are related to this particular event, which is what we want. The table we're pulling from is Contacts, and our default view will go with Active Contacts. Click on Done. And then for the label over here, we can have something a little bit more human-friendly. We'll just say Attendees again. All right, now we need to save and publish. You could also just hit Publish, and that'll save your changes. But this is basically pushing all those changes to the database so that your users can actually view them. All right, let me back up here to our solution quickly. We have contact and event. We could make changes to the contact forms as well, but for what we're doing, we don't need to. The same steps would apply though. All right, we've built out the foundation of our app. We've got our tables, our columns, we've got our forms updated. Now we need to pull all that together so that the users have an actual app to work in and to navigate around. To do that, we're going to come up to Apps and create a new app and model-driven app. This is sometimes called composing, where you're pulling everything together. We'll go with a modern app designer. Party planning will be the name of our app. And you get a preview here in the middle of what this is going to look like. Let me expand this here. If we come to navigation, this is what's called the sitemap. And the sitemap appears on the left-hand side of the app, and it's how users navigate. Let's build this out so our users can easily get to events and contacts. If we come into Area 1 here, we'll update this to be Party Planning. And then under Group, this is going to be sort of a subheading. We'll call this Party Planning as well. And then a sub-area, this is what actually points to your table. So for this one, we're going to select Table. And first we'll go with Events. Event there, that's the name of our table. Title, Events. And now you'll see a preview here of the navigation. All right, selecting this group right here, click on Add Sub-Area. So sub-areas go under the groups. This one, we're also going to choose a table, but this one we're going to point to Contact. And once again, you're getting a preview there. That's looking good. Let's save and publish. I'm just going to publish this time, which will also save. And then if we hit play, this will open up the end user UI, defaulting us to events. And there's our sitemap that we updated. First thing I want to go do is add some contacts. We do have the sample data loaded here, but I want to add some different contacts from the office. I'll just do some really simple data entry here. First we have Angela Martin. There's a lot of other information you could fill in here too, but I'm just going to say that we're good. Save and close. Another new record. This one will be Dwight Schrute. Save and close. I'll enter a few others using these same steps and I'll be right back. Okay, we've got a good list of contacts going here. Now let's come up to Events and create our first event. Let's say we're organizing the New Year's office party. So we'll give it that name. For type, you'll remember these are the choices. This is going to be a holiday party. You can select multiple here, but in our case, only holiday applies. Date and time, you'll see you get a nice calendar view here that you can just scroll through and select. This is going to be December 31st, and we'll make it at not quite midnight. Let's go with 10 p.m. Location, this one's going to be in the Scranton office, of course. Organizer, this will be Angela Martin, head of the party planning committee. I'm the owner there because I created this record, and now I need to save. And the reason I need to save is because I need to fill in the attendees here in the subgrid, but it's not going to be available until I save the record. So you can either save up at the top, or you can do a Control S, which is super handy. And now this table is available. So attendees, let's say who is going to this party. We'll add existing contact. And I'm actually just going to select everybody here and click Add. Looks like a fun party to me. And that's it. You've seen how to work with Dataverse to build a model-driven app end-to-end. If you want to learn more about Power Apps and how to build and customize model-driven apps, check out the link in the description to my full course. Thanks for watching.